The air was thick with tension as the countdown clock on the wall flickered, each second echoing like a death knell. Celine Morrow stood in the heart of the old research facility, the place where everything would be decided. The facility had once been a symbol of hope, the birthplace of the Genesis Protocol, the dream of evolution beyond humanity's flaws. Now, it had become the battlefield where humanity's fate would be sealed. She could hear the distant hum of machinery still running, a ghostly reminder of the world that had been. But the technology was more than just machinery, it was the last remaining hope, the final puzzle piece that could either save the Earth or obliterate it entirely. Across the room, Cade Markov, leader of the Harvesters, stood with his arms folded, his face cold and unyielding. His soldiers, clad in the remnants of old military armor, were stationed around him, weapons raised. Their eyes were full of a singular purpose: seize the protocol at any cost. Celine could feel the weight of their gaze on her. They had tracked her through the ruins, their relentless pursuit forcing her into this final confrontation. Markov's voice broke the silence, sharp and commanding. "You know it's over, Morrow," he said, his voice low, almost mocking. "You've been running from this moment your entire life, but there's no escape now. The Genesis Protocol is mine. It always has been." Celine met his gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the pulse of the countdown growing louder, the seconds slipping away. Every fiber of her being urged her to make a choice, but the weight of that choice was unbearable. She knew what Markov wanted: he wanted the technology to reshape the world in his image. He would force humanity into a new order, where power and control reigned supreme. But Celine also knew that the protocol was not simply a tool for domination, it was a promise of transcendence, an escape from the Earth that was dying. "It's not yours to take," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "This technology was never meant to be controlled by one man, Markov. It's the key to saving humanity, not enslaving it." Markov smirked, his eyes narrowing. "You're delusional. Humanity is weak. We've failed time and again. But with the Genesis Protocol, we can become something more. You think you can save this dying planet? It's beyond saving. The Earth will never heal. But with this power, we can ascend, free from this crumbling world, free from weakness." He stepped forward, his soldiers flanking him. "It's too late for Earth. The only question left is, will you join us, or will you die trying to protect the ruins of a dead world?" Celine's pulse quickened, but her resolve hardened. She knew that Markov's vision was flawed. Humanity's greatest strength had never been in its ability to dominate, but in its capacity to change, to learn from its mistakes, and to build something better. The Genesis Protocol could offer a future, but only if it was used with the right intentions. If Markov succeeded, the Earth would not only be lost, it would become a place of tyranny, ruled by those who would force evolution upon the rest of humanity, turning them into something unrecognizable. She glanced at the control panel before her, the heart of the Genesis Protocol. The glowing red buttons were all that stood between humanity's salvation and its destruction. The protocol's final stage was simple: press the button, and humanity would be freed from its earthly limitations. But it was also irreversible. Once activated, there would be no turning back. The Earth would be abandoned, and a new phase of existence would begin, an existence outside of time, beyond human understanding. Her thoughts raced, but there was no time left. The countdown was nearing its end. She couldn't let Markov control the protocol, not in the way he envisioned it. But she also couldn't let it be used to abandon the Earth, to leave it to rot while the human race evolved into something else. The planet, in all its brokenness, was still their home. Humanity's survival, if it was to mean anything, had to be tied to the Earth. Celine made her decision. The world was not beyond saving, not yet. It was still possible to rebuild, to evolve, but not through escaping it. She needed to use the Genesis Protocol, but with a different purpose in mind. Before Markov could make another move, Celine lunged for the control panel, her fingers pressing down on the red button. The room trembled as the machines hummed louder, the pulse of energy building. "No!" Markov shouted, his voice frantic as he charged toward her. But it was too late. The protocol had been activated. The world around her seemed to freeze, the air thick with energy. The glow from the control panel intensified, casting an eerie light across the room. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to stand still. The air felt electric, charged with possibility. But then the ground beneath her feet shook violently, and a deep rumble echoed through the facility. Celine held her ground, her heart pounding as she felt the full force of the protocol's power surge through her. Suddenly, the walls of the room began to ripple, distorting as though the fabric of reality itself was bending. Celine's body trembled with the raw energy, her senses overwhelmed by the intensity. She could feel the pull of something greater, something beyond human comprehension. The Genesis protocol had activated in a way no one had anticipated. It was not just about transcending humanity, it was about healing the Earth itself. In that moment, Celine understood. The true purpose of the protocol had never been to escape the Earth, but to unlock its potential, to bring about a new kind of evolution, one where humanity could rebuild in harmony with the planet. The protocol was not about abandoning the Earth. It was about transforming it, about fostering a new relationship between humanity and the planet, one where both could evolve together. The technology had the power to heal the Earth, to reverse the damage humanity had caused, but it needed to be used with love, not domination. But Markov wasn't about to give up so easily. He lunged at Celine, his hand outstretched, fingers grazing her arm. "You can't stop this. You don't understand the power you're tampering with." His voice was desperate, furious. Celine's eyes locked onto him as the reality around them warped, the very world itself seeming to bend under the protocol's influence. "It's not about power, Markov. It's about redemption," she said, her voice steady. The ground cracked beneath their feet, and the world seemed to implode into light. Markov's shout was swallowed by the deafening roar, and the facility disintegrated into a blinding glow. Celine's vision blurred, her body lifted by the force of the protocol's transformation. And then, as the light faded, she found herself standing at the edge of a new world, one that was healing, one where humanity and Earth had a chance to begin again. The countdown had reached its end, but for Celine, this was just the beginning. The world, as it had once been known, was no more. The ruins of the old Earth lay scattered across a landscape now transformed by the activation of the Genesis protocol. What remained was not a planet ravaged by destruction, but a world in the process of healing, of rebirth. The sky, once a dull gray, now carried the faintest hints of blue, the clouds parting to allow the sun's rays to filter through the haze. The oceans, though still scarred, were no longer as polluted, their waters slowly beginning to regain their clarity. The earth itself seemed to pulse with life again, the barren ground cracking open to reveal green shoots of new growth pushing through. Celine Moreau stood alone, looking out across the vast expanse of land that stretched before her, the wind brushing through her hair. The transformation had begun, not just in the earth, but in humanity itself. The protocol had worked, but not in the way anyone had expected. It had not simply elevated humanity to a higher plane of existence, nor had it led to their escape from the planet. Instead, it had unlocked a deeper connection between humanity and the world that had once been their home. The Genesis protocol had transcended its original purpose. What had started as a means to evolve beyond human limitations had instead become a tool for regeneration, for healing, for bringing both humanity and the earth into a new phase of existence. The technology had not abandoned the planet, as Markov had hoped. It had connected humanity to it in a way that no one had ever imagined, a symbiotic relationship, where both would evolve together, where the mistakes of the past could be healed. Celine's heart was heavy with both grief and hope. She had witnessed the fall of civilization, the collapse of everything she had once known. She had lost family, friends, and colleagues to the horrors of disease and war. She had lost faith in the world itself, and for a long time, she had wondered whether humanity deserved to survive. But now, as she stood on the edge of this new world, she could feel a sense of renewal, a sense of possibility that had been absent for so long. The Genesis Protocol had not just been about physical transformation, it had been about change on a fundamental level. Humanity's capacity for destruction had always been tied to its arrogance, its belief that it could control and dominate the world around it. The Protocol had stripped away that arrogance, forcing humanity to confront the truth: they were not separate from the Earth, but a part of it. The same forces that had once torn the planet apart were the very ones that had been woven into humanity's existence. The Earth was not something to be exploited, it was a partner in their survival. But the process had not been without its sacrifices. The harvesters were no more. Markov's vision of domination had crumbled, his forces scattered by the force of the Protocol's activation. The technology had proven far more powerful than he had ever imagined, and in the end, his pursuit of power had cost him everything. He had never understood that true power did not lie in control, but in harmony, in the ability to work together for the greater good. His death had been a consequence of his failure to see that. Celine could still hear his words echoing in her mind: humanity is weak. We've failed time and again. For a long time, she had believed that. She had believed that the world was beyond saving, that humanity had squandered its chance. But now, standing on the precipice of a new world, she understood that humanity's strength had always been in its ability to change, to adapt, to learn. The Genesis Protocol had not given them power, it had given them the opportunity to rebuild, to evolve into something better, something more attuned to the world around them. It was the beginning of a new cycle, one where humanity would no longer be its own worst enemy. But change, Celine knew, was never easy. It would take time for the people who had survived the devastation to fully grasp what had happened, to understand the depths of the transformation. The survivors would need guidance, and they would need to learn how to live in this new world, one where the old ways of thinking would no longer work. There would be challenges ahead. The Earth, though healing, was still fragile, and humanity's relationship with it had to be nurtured carefully. Old habits would die hard, and the scars of the past would not disappear overnight. Still, Celine felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. She had found the answers she had spent so many years searching for. Not just in the technology of the Genesis Protocol, but in the realization that humanity's true potential lay in its capacity for growth, for redemption. The Earth was not a place to escape from, it was a place to fight for, to protect, to honor. And in that fight, humanity could find a new purpose. She turned her gaze back to the horizon, where the sun was beginning to dip below the edge of the world. The night was falling, but the darkness no longer felt like an end. It felt like a beginning, a new chapter in the story of humanity, a story that was still being written. A movement behind her caught her attention, and she turned to see a group of survivors approaching. They were ragged and tired, but their faces held the spark of something new: hope. They had seen the change, felt the energy of the Protocol's activation, and they knew that something was different. They knew that the Earth was healing, and that they, too, had been given a second chance. One of them, a man with graying hair and a weathered face, stepped forward. "We saw it," he said, his voice trembling with awe. "The Earth, it's alive again. We can feel it." Celine nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "It's not just the Earth that's alive," she said softly. "It's us, too. We've been given a chance to rebuild, to become something better. But we have to do it together." The man nodded, and behind him, the others murmured in agreement. Celine could see the determination in their eyes. The road ahead would not be easy, but they were ready. Together, they would learn to live in harmony with the Earth, to honor its resilience and embrace their own potential. It would take time, patience, and sacrifice, but they had a chance, a real chance, to create a world where both humanity and the Earth could thrive. As the group gathered around her, Celine felt a warmth in her chest. The world had ended, yes, but in its place, something beautiful was beginning. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but she knew that, for the first time in a long while, there was hope. True hope. The kind that wasn't just about surviving, but about building something worth living for. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a golden glow. Celine took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air against her skin. The journey was just beginning. The days that followed were slow and deliberate, as the Earth began to recover from the activation of the protocol. The planet, free from the chokehold of human greed, seemed to breathe anew. Its landscapes were starting to heal. Where there had once been war-torn ruins, now greenery was sprouting. The air felt fresh, and the Earth's heartbeat pulsed with potential for the first time in centuries. Celine Moreau stood on a cliff, watching the valley below. The once toxic river now sparkled with a new vitality, and birds flew overhead, real birds, not the mutated versions that had once plagued the skies. The Earth, though scarred, was reclaiming its beauty. The laughter of children and the murmur of voices carried on the breeze as the small community of survivors worked together to rebuild. It was as though humanity, too, had been given a chance to start over. Behind her, the survivors had begun to rebuild not just their homes, but their spirits. They were no longer the same people who had lived before the protocol. They were scarred, yes, but also stronger. They understood now the importance of living in harmony with the Earth, not just as a matter of survival, but as a matter of respect. They had learned the cost of greed and destruction, and now they were determined to live differently. As Celine stood lost in thought, she heard footsteps behind her. The group of survivors was gathering, their faces a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They knew the Earth was healing, but they also understood it was still fragile. They would need to fight for this new world every day, to remain vigilant and not forget the mistakes that had brought the world to the brink of collapse. David, the older man with graying hair who had become one of their leaders, stepped forward. His eyes, though tired, were filled with quiet determination. "We're ready," he said. "The land is healing, and we're starting to understand how to live with it. But we need your help, Celine. You're the one who understands the protocol. How do we make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes?" Celine turned to face him, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. For so long, she had believed the Genesis Protocol held the key to humanity's salvation. But now she understood that the real key was within humanity itself. The Protocol had given them a chance, yes, but what they did with that chance would shape their future. She took a deep breath and smiled. "We begin by remembering," she said. "We remember the mistakes of the past. We don't repeat them. We honor the Earth and everything it provides. We use technology, but we use it wisely, with respect. We evolve, but we don't forget where we came from. The Genesis Protocol didn't give us salvation, it gave us the opportunity to heal, to rebuild, and to learn how to live as part of the world, not above it." David nodded thoughtfully, and the group of survivors listened intently. "You're right," David said. "We have the chance to create something better, not just for us, but for those who come after us." Celine looked out at the horizon, where the sun was dipping below the Earth's edge, casting a soft golden light over the land. The shadows grew long, but they no longer felt like an end. Instead, they felt like the beginning of something new. "There will be challenges ahead," Celine continued, "but we will face them together. We're not alone. We have each other, and we have the Earth. We're not just surviving anymore, we're thriving. We're building a future that's not about dominance, but balance. Harmony." A quiet murmur of agreement spread through the group. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were stewards of the Earth, guardians of the future. They would rebuild, but they would do it in a way that honored the planet and all its life. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of fresh earth and growing plants. For the first time in a long while, Celine breathed deeply, feeling alive in a way she hadn't in years. She didn't have all the answers, and neither did anyone else, but they had something more important: hope. And with it, the chance to evolve, not just technologically, but spiritually, to find their place in the world, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. Where everything ends, Celine murmured to herself, humanity begins. The words felt like a promise. No matter how broken the world had been, no matter how far humanity had fallen, there was always a way forward. There was always hope for redemption. She turned to face the group, her heart swelling with quiet hope. The earth had been given another chance. And humanity, too, had been given a chance to begin again. The journey was far from over. But this time, they would get it right. The earth, once vibrant with life, now lays in ruin. A silent, toxic fog covers the planet, blocking the sun's rays and turning day into an endless twilight. The oceans, once brimming with life, have long since risen to swallow entire cities, erasing the last traces of civilization. The skies are no longer the bright blue they once were. Instead, they are gray, perpetually cloaked by pollutants that have poisoned the air for generations. The forests that once spanned the globe are now nothing more than ashes scattered by fierce storms. Humanity has endured a long, slow decline, brought about by its own hand, the greed of corporations, the selfishness of powerful nations, the reckless use of technology. Now, standing on the brink of extinction, the remnants of mankind have to face the hard truth: their time on Earth is nearly over. But even as everything collapses, there is a hope, a spark of something more. In the final days of Earth, amidst the crumbling ruins and the scattered survivors, there are those who dare to believe that humanity can be saved. That even after the world ends, something greater could begin. These are the people who remember the stories of a time before the fall, a time when technology was meant to elevate humanity to new heights. What was once the cause of their destruction could now hold the key to their salvation. Some say it's a forgotten project, buried deep beneath layers of dust and time. Others believe it's a secret hidden in plain sight, something so powerful that it could transcend the human condition and reshape reality itself. For them, the end of the world is not the end of humanity, it is merely the beginning of something greater, a transformation into something new. Celine Moreau was one of the last of the old world's thinkers. A former biologist turned rogue scientist, she had seen the worst of what mankind had wrought. Once a respected researcher, her career had been upended when the virus pandemic, which had ravaged the planet in the final years of civilization, claimed the lives of her family. Her parents, along with her younger brother, fell victim to the plague, their bodies rotting away before they could even be properly mourned. It was then that Celine swore she would stop at nothing to find an answer to the question that had haunted her since the virus first began spreading: can humanity survive this? In the wreckage of the world, Celine became something of an outcast, an explorer in a wasteland of forgotten cities and abandoned technologies. She was no longer bound by the conventional rules that had governed her past. The institutions she had once worked for were now shadows of their former selves, crumbling under the weight of corruption and extinction. Yet, in the darkest corners of this broken world, she had discovered something remarkable: whispers of a hidden project, an old, near-mythical technology that had the potential to save humanity. The idea was simple. Humanity, through a long-forgotten breakthrough, could evolve. Not simply by rebuilding what had been lost, but by transcending their frail, dying bodies and creating a new form of existence. This new humanity could emerge from the ashes of Earth's devastation, rising beyond the limitations of their current form. But such a transformation came at a cost. There were no guarantees. No one knew if the technology would work or if it would destroy what little remained of humanity. Some said it was a pipe dream, a fantasy born of desperation. Others feared what such power could do in the wrong hands. But Celine was undeterred. For her, the pursuit of this technology was the last hope, the only way forward for a world on the brink of annihilation. The journey to uncover this secret was far from simple. The old world's ruins held far more than just relics of a past society. Dangerous factions had arisen in the wake of the collapse, some seeking to profit off of the desperation of the surviving humans, while others clung to the old ways, unwilling to accept the possibility of change. These groups would stop at nothing to either destroy or seize control of any potential discovery. They had already begun hunting down scientists like Selene, people who dared to ask questions that the rest of humanity had long abandoned. The truth was dangerous, and for those clinging to power, it was far safer to keep the knowledge buried and the world in chaos. But there was a larger question, one that gnawed at Selene's soul: what would humanity become after they evolved? Would they still be human in any sense of the word, or would they become something unrecognizable, a race of beings so detached from their origins that the very concept of humanity would cease to have meaning? The new form of existence promised by the old technology would be far beyond anything that had ever been imagined, an existence beyond the limitations of physical bodies, a chance to exist in a new reality altogether. It was the ultimate gamble, but with Earth dying, what other choice did they have? As Selene ventured deeper into the forgotten corners of the world, piecing together fragments of old research, she began to realize that this transformation was not just a scientific endeavor. It was a philosophical one. If humanity could evolve, could they shed the destructive behaviors that had brought the world to ruin? Could they escape the cycle of violence, greed, and self-destruction that had defined them for centuries? Or would they simply repeat the same mistakes, but in a new form? The story of humanity's last days is a story of endings and beginnings. For Selene, the quest for survival is not merely about finding a way to save her kind, it is about what comes after. Can the remnants of humanity evolve into something better, or will they be doomed to perish, as they always have, in their own creations? As the last chapters of the Earth story are written, the question looms larger than ever. Where everything ends, can humanity truly begin again? In the face of extinction, this is not merely a quest for survival, it is a quest for rebirth. And the answers Selene uncovers will determine whether humanity's final moments will be its darkest, or whether the end of everything is simply the beginning of something far more extraordinary. Selene Morrow had never known a world free from the weight of despair. Even as a young girl, she'd heard stories of a time when the skies were blue and the oceans teemed with life. Those stories had been told by the older generation, the ones who remembered a world not yet ravaged by disease, greed, and war. Now, as a rogue scientist amidst the wreckage of civilization, she no longer held on to such fantasies. In a world where the sun barely pierced through the thick smog and the oceans had drowned entire continents, hope had become a luxury few could afford. Yet, in the deep recesses of her heart, she clung to a flicker of that old belief, that humanity could be saved, if only they could evolve beyond the mistakes of their past. Selene's journey began in the ruins of what had once been a bustling metropolis, New Dawn City. Once the epitome of technological progress, it had now been reduced to a graveyard of crumbling buildings and forgotten memories. The air was thick with dust, the streets littered with the remains of the past. The few remaining survivors wandered aimlessly, their faces hollow, their eyes dull. They were the last of their kind, clinging to life but too broken to truly live. Among them, Selene moved like a ghost. Her footsteps were silent, but her mind raced, driven by the need to uncover the truth about the forgotten technology that could change everything. Her search led her to the underground chambers of an old research facility, buried deep beneath the decaying city. It was there, amidst the remnants of forgotten experiments and destroyed databases, that she found the first real clue. A series of encrypted files, partially corrupted but still intact. She spent days deciphering the data, her eyes bloodshot and weary. It was clear now, this was no mere legend. The project was real. It had been called the Genesis Protocol, a secret initiative developed by a coalition of scientists from across the world, designed to push humanity beyond its physical limitations. The aim was not simply to cure disease or eliminate hunger but to transcend the very human form, to unlock a potential that had been locked away for millennia. It was humanity's last attempt at salvation, a bold, and perhaps reckless, plan to evolve into something beyond their own understanding. The more Celine uncovered, the more she realized the stakes were higher than she had imagined. The Genesis Protocol wasn't just about survival, it was about the future of existence itself. The technology involved was based on principles of bioengineering and quantum consciousness transfer. Ideas that were once considered science fiction but had now become a terrifying possibility. It could offer immortality, free the human race from the limitations of disease and aging, and potentially enable humanity to exist in a new form entirely. But it came at a cost. The process was volatile, dangerous. No one knew what would happen to a person who underwent the transformation. Would they retain their memories? Their personalities? Or would they be something entirely different, a new species altogether, no longer bound to the earth but existing in a new, higher plane of existence? As Celine pieced together the fragments of the Genesis Protocol, she realized that it had never been completed. The project had been abandoned and the last great war between nations had decimated the world's resources. The scientists who had worked on the project had scattered, and their research had been lost in the chaos. But the potential was still there. Somewhere, deep beneath the ruins of the Earth, the final pieces of the puzzle lay hidden. All Celine had to do was find them. But she wasn't the only one searching. A ruthless faction, known as the Harvesters, had emerged from the remnants of the old military-industrial complex. They were led by a man named Cade Markov, a former general who had once been part of the global war effort. After the collapse of the old world, Markov had risen to power, using the remnants of military technology to control what was left of humanity. The Harvesters believed that the Genesis Protocol was the key to rebuilding the world in their image, one where the strong ruled and the weak were crushed. They didn't care about the cost of evolution, they cared only about harnessing its power for themselves. For them, the end of the world was not a tragedy, it was an opportunity to reshape the future in their favor. As Celine ventured deeper into the ruined cities, she began to feel the weight of the Harvesters closing in. She had made enemies during her quest, and now, she was being hunted. But she could not turn back. The stakes were too high. She had to complete the mission. The knowledge she sought could either save humanity or doom it forever, depending on who got their hands on it. As Celine drew closer to uncovering the final pieces of the Genesis Protocol, she discovered an unsettling truth: the process was more than just a means of transcendence. It was an escape, an exodus from Earth itself. The transformation the protocol promised wasn't just about evolving into something better, it was about leaving behind the decaying planet for good. The final step of the protocol involved transferring human consciousness into a new, artificial realm, a place that existed outside of time and space, beyond the Earth's crumbling boundaries. The more she learned, the more Celine began to question the cost of this new world. If humanity evolved in this way, what would happen to the Earth? Would they abandon it, leaving it to die in the ruins? Or could they somehow save it, even after they had left it behind? The Genesis Protocol promised freedom, but it also carried the potential for unprecedented destruction. Celine knew that if she couldn't find a way to control it, the protocol could rip the fabric of existence apart. In the final showdown, Celine confronted Cade Markov and the Harvesters in the ruins of an old laboratory, the last remaining facility where the final steps of the Genesis Protocol could be completed. It was there that she made a choice between humanity's evolution into something beyond their earthly form or saving the Earth itself. The decision was not easy. To choose the protocol meant a future free from suffering and disease, but at the cost of abandoning everything humanity had known. To choose to save Earth meant sacrificing the potential for a new existence, but it would give humanity a second chance to rebuild. As the facility's countdown clock ticked down, Celine made her choice, understanding that where everything ended, humanity could begin again, not by escaping their world, but by saving it from the very forces that had brought it to ruin. The story of humanity's rebirth was not one of transcendence alone, it was one of redemption, of learning from their mistakes and finding a new path forward.